All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me get started here. Now, this is going to be our last video on perfect accuracy. And you might ask why. We don't have it yet. So, we're going to talk about consistency. So, let me show you, for example, some of thine arrows. Now, as you can see, every one of these is slightly different. Some of them have extreme damage. That particular one does. And every one of these is totally different. In addition, when you talk about a mixed batch of arrows, the spine of an arrow doesn't just, hear that? That little crack? Doesn't just mean its flexibility. It also means its ability to flex in any given direction. Okay? Because when an arrow is fired, it's going to flex. Now, it might flex up a little, or down a little, or to the right a little, or down and right, or up, or left, or whatever. Now, I can feel that this way it's a little stiffer than this way. I can flex it more this way, quite a bit more, in fact. And so, what you can see there is that this is clearly, when you examine the arrow, you can tell that it wants to flex more one way than it does another. That's one thing. The other thing is that the fletchings are all different. Well, you can't get perfect accuracy and perfect consistency with everything being different. You just can't. It doesn't really work that way. There are going to be too many differences and inconsistencies over the various fletchings and over the various shafts. Now, you've heard the term a mixed batch of arrows, and we're going to talk for a minute while I shoot about what that actually is and what that really means. And so, we're going to go back here so you can kind of see from my perspective how far away that is. It's not that far. I'm going to set you up right here, and the reason I'm going to is I want to be able to have you guys hear me without me yelling at you. And since I'm going to be here most of the time, we're going to talk about consistency now. I do have these arrows dialed into the point where they're pretty accurate. They're pretty consistent. It ain't bad. I've got the bow pretty dialed in. But every one of these arrows that's here came from a mixed batch of arrows. Now, you might think that the mixed will just mean your fletchings. Oh man, you know what? This tripod has had its best day, I'm afraid. It doesn't want to stay in the game anymore, so hold on. Let me fix things here. That's better. All right, so all we're going to do is I'm going to do a little shooting while we talk about these, and the reason is each of these arrows is spined a little differently. They are not technically identical, guys. And because they're not, I can't shoot them identically, and I can't just line up the fletchings all the exact same way and shoot them. Because a lot of times what you'll find is that the shaft will do that, where one shaft flexes one way and kind of comes off to the side. Now that came off pretty far to the right, but I'm using a light bow and I knew what I was doing, and I'm at 20 feet and I know how much that's going to come over. Now, I'm going to go out of my way to get the fletching right, to align it correctly. The first time I didn't even look. Aim for the dead center of the target, and look at that. Comes out in exactly the same spot. That's consistency. That was my first hole. So I'm about 1.25 inches from that hole. Well, that's not really ideal, is it? And we look at the setup of the bow and all these other things. Let me just adjust, because it does look like it's a little off to the right. There you go. So you make your fine tune on your bow, and fair enough. Now let's say that we want to get a nice tight group, because, you know, we're at the archery range. I want to impress people with my perfect accuracy and form. And so I want to make a nice tight group. And I want my arrows to come on pretty much exactly the same. I don't want any flyers. Well, a flyer is going to happen with this group. it's almost guaranteed, unless I really know my shit and I've really dialed things in perfectly. Isn't that fun? Now this one jumped up pretty high. In fact, it jumped up really high. And I didn't actually do anything wrong. No, I shot this one perfect. Let me just try that again. Shot really light this time. And what you'll find when you're shooting is that some arrows are actually a little inconsistent. And sometimes that comes down to the way that the arrow is actually spined. When you're talking about a mixed batch of arrows, they're not always spined exactly the same. They're a mixed bag. They could be any which way, and they will be. And you ain't got any say in that. They're just going to be that way. And so there's the first four, okay? Now I'm just going to bring you over here. Now, aside from me babbling and barely paying attention, that's not a bad group, right? I mean, you know, there's my thumb for reference. That's a nice tight group. I cannot jam my thumb in there anywhere. There's not enough space. And the whole group is the width of my thumb. And going the other way, it's about the same. It's a nice tight 1-inch group, okay? If you go from the center of one hole to the center of the next, which we're going to do because, you know, there's that. I should measure it, sort of a thing, right? Hold on, let me just get the tape measure now. I will say, I guess you could just take me word for it, but this technically is 1 inch if on most people, typically, and in me, it's actually exactly 1 inch. So I'm just going to do it and go from the center of one hole and see, and we're definitely within the inch. So in fact, it looks like it's going to be right about perfectly 1 inch wide for that group and less in height. It's like 1/2 inch high. That's a pretty tight group. I can't really, you know, complain and say that's not accurate, but is it perfect accuracy? Well, by theoretical definition, yes. I was able to put them all really tightly together. Did I pick the spot that each arrow specifically was going to go? No. And the reason is they are all slightly different arrows. The likelihood of me Robin Hooding my arrow is very low. In fact, I've gone out of my way to make that as low as possible by virtue of the fact that I've been doing my fletchings. And that means I create my fletchings and I can't exactly have them be all it's the same while I'm in the middle of engineering new fletchings and trying out 10 different designs, right? So the fact that I'm able to put up a nice tight group with, well, there are no two exactly the same. Every one is an experiment that is a slight variation on the theme. But that doesn't mean that I can't achieve good accuracy. Now, that's the real trick. Perfect accuracy is almost like a fallacy. I mean, it's not something you really chase. It's something you talk about, but it's really not theoretically possible. Is it? Could I have fired that and made it perfect? Sure I could. But what I will tell you is that I noticed when I fired it that this arrow is, again, spined a little differently. They don't generally, I can feel when I put this spine, spine, one is stiffer than the other. Just like my spine is stiffer than the soft belly, even though I'm hard, it's the same. So even though it's hard, it's still not quite as stiff as it is in that one direction. And when you find that spine, you'll understand what I mean. Now you look along here and see how it's aligned. So that's how you're supposed to shoot, is to identify the spine of the arrow and then fletch it accordingly. Okay, well, that's not always done. When you're talking about a cheap batch of arrows, that's a mixed batch especially. That's not been done. So a mixed batch means they're not really paying much attention to the spine because they don't know the specific spine you're going to need. So in a mixed batch, you're supposed to get a variety of spines. Now what that means is that some of those may want to jump up on you, okay? So I kind of threw that one up there on purpose just to show you what I mean, but at the same time, this is how this works. Now, you may want perfect accuracy, but in the end, if you're consistently doing something wrong, you'll be consistently off. Well, what if I don't want that? What if I want to bury that cockroach right in there with the other two from this set and make a nice tight group? Because that's what I want, mister. All right, well. Is that it? Heck no. Why? What did I do wrong? Well, in retrospect, I aimed a little low and I pulled a little light, if you really want to know. Consistency is really incredibly important, but it comes down to a lot of things. What did I do wrong that time? I aimed in the right spot. I pulled as hard as I pulled the first one, but this is where we come into those inconsistencies. This is a very different fletching. And this one has been known to jump up more than any of my others. It's why it's my hunting setup. So I fire a very light shot. With this, to really get it into this other group tightly, I have to be incredibly precise with that arrow. And it is incredibly sensitive to draw length because we're only at 20 freaking feet. And that's designed for longer range. These are designed to be my hunting arrows. And you could see that one just kind of threw itself right off, sideways. But it was perfectly on line to come in with my main group, which is actually where I aimed it. And I pulled it hard enough to get there. So let's take a quick look at what I see here that could show me what I might have done wrong. Let's change that fletching around. Hey, that's a little better, eh? Not perfect, but it still kicked the tail over. Now, there can be a variety of causes for that, and I've already covered some of those, and weight can be one of them, but so can spine. So when I look over the arrow and I start to roll it in my hand and flex it, and I'm feeling for a stiffer spot. Now in this one, right there, yeah. I was just going to say I really don't feel one. It feels really equal, but then when I get to here, there's that stiffer spot. That stiffer spot should actually be to the inside of the riser, guys, if you can manage it. So when I look here, this alignment will achieve that. So let's fire it this way and see if it eliminates that problem. Well, it certainly came out straighter. It didn't get kicked over as much. In fact, it came out dead in line with my group. I just gave it too light a shot. After an adjustment, I've pointed out to you guys, you should always shoot a lighter shot just to see how it responded to your adjustment till you're ready to fire a harder shot. So again, I don't want to wreck any of my other arrows, especially given that I'm using broadheads, guys, but given that these are all completely different fletchings, and I do just want to let you see that. I mean, even the ones that appear identical, like these two, this one here, and this one, they are totally different in their profiles. They are similar, but they're totally different sizes, and where they're located is different. All these changes. These are my target arrows. That was the group of 4 that I was saying was all in 1 inch. Well, when you look, they clearly are. I mean, they're a nice, tight little group. So let's pull those. And there's our 4 target arrows. Well, now, you might think when you look at this group that this one is less accurate. But it's really not. I just shot it a little lighter. Same with this one. It's really not. I just shot it a little lighter. The problem is, you see the way these two are right here? How they're pinned up against each other? Those are sharp broadheads. As soon as I saw that, instead of going, hey, yeah, I should bury all my other arrows into that tiny little hole, I said, no, because I don't want that. So, did I achieve perfect accuracy? Well, I hate to say it, but I have to say yes. Because given that all of these are different fletches, very different, and I'm now sorting out the spine and making sure that when I do my nocks, before I glue them, I want to make sure that the spine is aligned correctly, then look at the fletching, then design the fletching or set up the fletching or rotate the fletching so that I can keep the spine that is stiff on the inside of the riser. So if you're right-handed, you want that to be on the left side of the arrow. If you're left-handed, you're going to want that to be on the right side of the arrow if you're firing off the left side of a riser. Now, it's different if you're firing off, let's say a drop-away rest. What you really want, ideally, is the arrow spine to be up so that it will be as stiff as possible and flex as little as possible. And that's a good thing. So you want to identify where the spine is in the arrow, and that's kind of something we haven't covered. But it's because when you get a mixed batch of arrows and you start shooting, that's great. Start by doing exactly what I showed you. Dialing in your arrows and taking a look at them, repairing any damaged fletchings, identifying which are your best arrows, putting those aside, looking at your worst ones, finding out why. And that can be accounted for pretty readily if, for example, the moment you get these, you start out by going through them all, dismantle them all, like I showed you, don't take the fletchings off, just look through the spine, check those out, identify which direction the spine needs to be, and then take a look at your fletchings and see if you can work with that. If not, hey, I've shown you what to do. You can reshape the fletching to get it out of the way so that you can use it. And then you can line up all your spines to be exactly the same. Once you do, you'll find that they're much more consistent. Now, the problem I have here, if you can call it that, is that because I have different fletchings and they all work very well, they all are very accurate, but they're not especially consistent. Individually, they are. I can fire the same arrow over and over and over again and get the same shot. But taken as a group, there are variances between them that mean I cannot fire them all at exactly the same draw length because they got totally different fletchings and they're meant to be sensitive to draw length. What can I tell you? They work. And so I can't really complain. Like, that's not exactly what I'd call a bad thing. It's kind of the other way around. It's awesome. So what I will say is that I'm really happy with the way the fletchings have worked out. They're very accurate. These guys have all proven to be very, very good at flying broadheads really accurately, and they just don't care about the distance. I go out to 10 meters, and I'm not even close to a full draw with these ones, and they're accurate. I can do the same 10 meters with these ones, but even though they're lighter arrows, I have to draw harder because there's less fletching there. But they're so good that I'm still not at a full draw, not even close. And that's pinpoint accurate, where I don't even have to aim up yet. But right about 10 meters with these ones is the point where I'm at just shy of a full draw and aiming up slightly. If I'm at a 28 maximum draw on that bow, I'm shooting 27, and I'm aiming up an inch or so above the target, just high and just to the left usually. And that'll be where I'm pinning the center. So at that point, though, your draw length has to be right. If your consistency is there with the arrows and the fletchings and the weight balance and all that, it'll help you a lot. But don't do what I've done. Pick one type of fletching and then keep as close to that as you can throughout your arrows so that you end up with a system that works for you. By that, I mean a fletching that works for you and a set of arrows that is as closely matched as possible. Needs to be just that. If you want consistently tight groups, don't do this. Don't make everyone a different experiment. Experiment with one. Shoot that one. Adjust it. Tune it until you like it and you're happy with it. Then move on and add that fletching to the rest of the arrows in the set, and you'll find you end up a lot happier. What I did was find that, some of them are spined a little lighter than others, and they're going to spine up a little more, and a little too stiff a spine on a weak bow, you're better off going with a lighter tip and just
having it balance out right and it'll fly nice. But these are actually decent spine, 6.2 mil, 500 spine. And these are the ones that actually seem to live up to that spine rating. These ones were a little bit softer, maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I didn't test them empirically, but I have shot them an awful lot. And I will tell you, these ones react well to a softer bow, and these ones don't. They jump up like crazy on a softer bow, like they didn't get enough flex or something. And as soon as I put the heavier tips on, that goes away and they come out perfect. So that's how I empirically know that these ones are stiffer spine than these ones. Within that, that spine has a direction, right? It's on one particular spot. It's a spine. So when you feel it, you need to check for that spine and see if you can identify the exact spot where that spine is. If not, some of them are really not spined and it'll just be okay. A mixed batch of arrows is like that. So the idea with a mixed batch is to try and identify the spine you like, find an arrow that really you like a lot, and then bring that to an actual arrow shop and show them, okay, this is the spine and flexibility and thickness of arrow and all this stuff, the weight of the tip and all this stuff. This is what I like. I've gone through my mixed set, and these ones are my favorite. I need a set like this, and they'll take your arrows and make you a set like that. And if you have a fletching you've made yourself, just tell them to put the standard plastic fletchings on and you'll adjust them from there. And you'll have a good set that are as close to identical as you could possibly get them. That is the goal. Now, I can shoot tight groups as I want, but it's partly because I'm aware of each fletching and their slight variances, and I've shot them enough times that I can just compensate with my draw. Now, if I were locked into a single draw length, say 27 inches every time, I wouldn't be able to do that. And this is where I really recommend you finally examine your arrows and build them according to how you want to shoot. Now, as a beginner, you're not likely to know any of this stuff, which is why they give you mixed batches in the first place. For a beginner, it really won't matter. You're going to have some right-handed fletchings. You're going to have some left-handed fletchings. You're going to have some spiral-type fletchings. You're going to have some just regular flight fletchings. You'll have a variety, and that's the whole point. And when the spine, you'll have a variety. So the trick is to examine those, shoot those, see what they're like, see which ones you like, and then learn to identify why they're like that. And that's what this is for, to help you guys figure these details out so that when you go to your archery shop, you'll know what you're looking for and the lengths you want, and you'll know your draw length, and you'll know all these details and how strong your bow is. Even if you didn't buy a machine, you could do what I did. Take a belt, put weights on it until you know. I used to do it in the bush with water in jugs. I just weighed the jug full of water before I left, emptied it, carried some empty jugs into the bush, and used water jugs, and it worked great. It's how I used to test all my bows. So that's going to be it for this one. Clearly, I'm starting to babble. Caution, caution, danger, Keith Robinson. Anyway, that's it for this one, guys. I just wanted to say that is as close as I can get you to perfect accuracy without being there with you, seeing your individual setup, seeing your bow, seeing this, seeing that, knowing whether your form is at fault or whether your arrow is at fault or this or that. I mean, there's so many things. But most of the time, I see a guy shooting 2 or 3 really nice arrows that are bang on target at, say, 20 meters, and he's really happy with that, but he can't figure out why the other arrows never match that performance. And he thinks it's the bow or him every single time. Guys, it's not. If you're shooting good arrows at all, if some of the arrows are shooting perfect, the bow is set up. Don't touch that. Don't touch the perfect arrows. Leave them alone. Go to the worst arrows, examine them, figure out what's wrong, and fix them. And you can. And this is how you do it. So in the end, the really important part is identifying the spine. If you want them to be consistent, you need to know which direction they're spining to so that you can line up all those spines exactly the same. Now, in a mixed batch, you need arrows that spine up, spine down, spine right, spine left. And they'll give those to you the way they're fletched. A lot of people think those are mistakes. They're not. Believe it or not. That's a mixed batch. Keith out.